The core box for Legions Imperialis comes with 2 Warhound Titans, and so that's what we're going to paint today. One as a loyalist and the other as a traitor Legio. We're going to be painting the loyalist Titan in the colours of the Legio Gryphonicus and the traitor as the Legio Mortis. Now I've magnetised both of these already, both magnetising the weapons using a 3x1mm in both sides, and also the bodies of the Warhound Titans as well using 5x1mm magnets. The weapons were magnetised by slicing the bottom of the arm off using an X-Acto knife and attaching a 3mm by 1mm magnet. I then drilled a hole into the socket of the weapon and inserted and glued another 3mm by 1mm magnet, being very careful to orient the magnet correctly. I also magnetised the centre by gluing a 5x1mm magnet to the base and another 5x1mm magnet to the top part of the Titan. Now that everything's magnetised, we can move on to the painting. The first step, as per most of my minis, is priming through the airbrush using the light grey primer from Vallejo. After that, we're going to follow up with base coating the entire mini using Model Air Steel, also from Vallejo. Whilst airbrushing, I also thought it'd be a good idea to paint some of the Legio Mortis Titan panels red, as red is a reasonably annoying colour to work with. That said, I end up actually covering most of these up as one, I'm not super happy with the red colour that I ended up with here, and also the red spilled over heaps. I'm still very much getting used to using an airbrush. After laying down the base coat through the airbrush, we add a coat of Nuln oil over the metallic areas of the Titan. We can then add some detail to the frame of the Titan by picking out some areas with different colours of metallic paints. In this case, I'm using Spartan Bronze to pick out areas like the joints on the legs of the Titan. Now we get to move on to the most exciting part, painting the armour panels. For the Legio Mortis panels, we're going to make use of 3 key colours, a red and a dark blue for most of the armour panels, as well as white for the panels on the head. We start by blocking out the dark areas with a quick coat of Death Reaper from 2 thin coats. We also block out the white area, starting with a base coat of Griffin Claw. Then we start to gradually build up blue colour using several thin layers of Cold Corpse Blue. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I wasn't particularly happy with the red colour that I airbrushed on, so I ended up painting over these areas using Sanguine Scarlet, and now I'm much happier with the result. The next step is to glaze over the grey panels with a smaller area of Wolf Grey. Now when glazing, we want to make sure that we're drawing the pigment towards the area that we want it to be the most visible. We make sure to do this on both of the legs of the Titan as well as the panels on the top. And after this, we add an edge highlight using Wolf Grey. We also paint over the head with Ivory Tusk and then glaze over this with several layers of Trooper White. After glazing the grey panels, we move on to the trim. And for this, we're going to be using Dragon's Gold from 2 thin coats, making sure not to water it down too much, as we want it to settle on the top of the trim and not bleed into the panels. To add a bit of definition to the red areas on the leg panels and on the main body, we glaze several very thin layers of Berserker Red, drawing the pigment towards the areas that are most likely to be in shadow. The panels on the weapons are painted in much the same way as the panels on the Titan's body. After painting these, I cover the back of the weapon and the front casing on the Volkite weapons with Dwarven Iron. I then pick out several areas using Spartan Bronze, such as the muzzles and the parts of the weapon that look like heat sinks. And finally, to finish off the Legio Mortis Titan, I apply some decals from the Warlord Titan decal sheet for Legio Mortis, and then shade the trim using Agrax Earthshade. Okay, now to swap over to painting the Legio Gryphonicus Titan. we'll skip over the start of the painting, as it's much the same as with the previous Titan. Basically a Nuln oil wash and then picking out some of the metal details. For the armor panels, we're going to be using a combination of a desaturated blue and yellow. We'll start by blocking out the desaturated blue using Wolf Grey, painting most of the leg panels and the main armor panel on the body. For the head and the two carapace areas, we're going to use a couple of thin coats of dark sun yellow. After this, I start to glaze the main body armor panels using Gravestone Blue, focusing on adding colour to the areas facing toward the top of the miniature. I add several layers of this with a gradually reduced area each time to create a transition. I also follow this for the yellow areas, both the head and the left and right carapace, adding a glazed highlight of Skulker yellow and then an edge highlight with the same colour. After this, we move on to painting the trim of the Titan. Much like the Legio Mortis Titan that we've already painted, we'll start with the colour Dragon's Gold, painting the trim on the head, on the body and on the legs. Then we pick out the banners both on the legs and on the body of the Titan with a base coat of the colour Dragonfang. Now we can move on to shading the miniature using Agrax Earthshade. For this, we're going to be shading both the golden trim on the panels of the Titan, as well as the banners that we just finished painting. While this is drying, we give the shield on the body of the Titan a quick coat of Witching Hour blue. We're then able to move on to highlighting the Titan. So we start with highlighting the banners using Vampire Fang. Unlike the Legio Mortis Titan, I highlight the gold trim with glistening gold. This helps the gold colour to look significantly brighter than without the highlight. I also add some Dwarven Iron to a couple of the areas that I hadn't yet painted using a metallic paint. So on the top of the Titan and on the sides and the mouth of the Titan's head. We can then move on to highlighting the shield on the Titan using Leviathan Blue. The weapons for this Titan are painted in a similar fashion as we did for the Legio Mortis Titan, by painting the panels using the same colour as the Titan, and then using Spartan Bronze and Dwarven Iron to add some detail to the metallic areas. After this, we coat the weapons in Nuln oil and leave them to dry. We can then add a few decals for the Legio Gryphonicus from the Warlord Titan decal sheet. And with that, the Titans are finished, so now it's time to move on to the basing. I've been keeping my basing scheme fairly simple for my Legions Imperialis units, starting with a couple of thin coats of Dust Bowl, and then adding a generous helping of Agrax Earthshade, particularly in the recessed areas. Once this dries, I pick out the raised areas from both the cracks and the edges around the recesses using the colour Sandstone. And done! I am really happy with how these Titans turned out, and I'm looking forward to being able to give them a spin on the tabletop soon. What Legio will you use for your Titans? Let us know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching.